You're watching World Insight, still to come on our program. As the world anticipates a peaceful settlement of China-India standoff in the Galvan Valley, Indian Prime Minister Modi made a surprise visit to the border and took a swipe at China. We'll discuss the implications after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. As the world anticipates a peaceful settlement on the China-Indian confrontation in the Galvan Valley, Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, with his Indian counterpart, National Security Advisor from the Indian side, and had a frank and in-depth exchange of views on the issue on Sunday. Both sides said that they had agreed to a significant disengagement of troops. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid a surprise visit to the Himalayan desert region of Ladakh last Friday amid border tensions with China. Earlier, clashes between the two sides left dozens of soldiers dead or wounded. Modi was accompanied by India's Chief of Defense Staff and also chatted with soldiers and border police. Modi made a thinly veiled swipe at China when he addressed the soldiers and made the speech on so-called expansionism. At the same time, India has been deploying its special forces and new heavy weapons to the border with China. So what's the intention behind Modi's sudden visit and the military deployment to the area? Let's loop in our guests and discuss on this topic. For more on China-India ties in Beijing, we have Hu Shisheng, Director of the Institute for South Asian Studies at the China Institute of Contemporary International Relations. Good to see you, sir. Joining us from India, in New Delhi, we have Chitrapu Uday Bhaskar, Director of the Society for Studies of Policies, and who's also a retired commodore who served in the Indian Navy. Welcome to both of you. First of all, how should we understand the latest visit by the Prime Minister of India to the border area lately? Mr. Bhaskar?
The visit of Prime Minister Modi to the Ladakh region was really to convey national resolve at a time when we have had what I will only describe at this point as a challenge in terms of the line of actual control. You will remember that there was a certain amount of tension that was building up. So this has been a very major setback and challenge, as I see it, to the India-China relationship.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of uncertainty in India, and I think Prime Minister Modi's visit had 2 or 3 purposes. Number one, for the troop, to really give them a morale boost. Number 2, to the domestic audience in India. And number 3, I think, to the whole world, to say that India is taking a very, very resolute position, if I could put it that way.
Okay, Mr. Hu, from the Chinese side, now, when actions is taking place by one side, usually what matters also is the reactions from the other side and the interpretations from the other side. What is the Chinese interpretation of the latest move by the Indian Prime Minister?
I think I agree all the 3 objectives, which was listed by Commander Bhaskar. But I want to add one more, that is that to know the ground realities. Because I know that Prime Minister has a detailed discussion with the local corps commander, who also participate into the corps commander level talks in several rounds. So we want to know the details, what the Chinese side positions and how the ground realities. I think this is also serving the purposes.
Now, what is next? We have seen, Mr. Hu, from the Indian side, taking off of Chinese apps from India users. We have also seen India government, in a way, trying to suggest it's willing to withdraw from further efforts into RCEP, which China possibly will be part of it too. So how should we understand all of these series of actions and at least words about actions from the Indian side, Mr. Hu?
I think also first want to show the revenge. Revenge, especially after the bloody physical conflicts in Galvan Valley, has to show some, to have some response to see that Indian side also can using the leverage to range some revenge against the Chinese behavior. Second, I think that most important is that want to take full advantage of this conflict so that to stirring up the anti-China feelings and the nationalism and the patriotism, and at the same time, all of so that can convince or persuade the clients or the consumers or users of this Chinese APP to give up because of nationalist reasons or patriotism reasons. Otherwise, without this incidents, I don't think it is so easy to persuading the Indian citizens who already got accustomed to the Chinese APPs. But in such kind of accidental event, so it will provide facilities for the government and for some of the interest groups to sell the idea that by the excuse of security, so that convincing the Indians to using their own replacements.
I see.
So that maybe to in the future, so that to reducing the dominant influence and even the market shares of the Chinese APP.
But
I think that for the interest groups, maybe one of the basic reasons behind it.
when you take actions, I mean, anybody, any country, there is result. And whether the apparent rhetorics about the actions and the real end result are the same or not are usually debatable. Now, some say it is also debatable about the latest decision made by the Indian side regarding trade cooperation, regarding, technology cooperation. What do you make of it?
I'd like to just add a couple of points to what Dr. Hu has said. Very experienced man, he knows India and South Asia very well. And I just want to clarify one point, that when you made the question, you seem to link up what happened in Galwan Valley with the RCEP decision. I just want to clarify that India's decision on the BRI and the RCEP were taken before what happened in Galwan. So that is the first major point I want to make. The second is, as far as the decision by the Indian government about these apps, the Chinese apps, yes, it was arrived at after what happened in Galwan, and I would interpret this as one of the responses by the Indian side because of the same point that Dr. Hu made, that when you lose soldiers, and as you know, in India, the information is disseminated very widely. It's a democracy. We have a large number of TV channels that are constantly beaming news about national security. So there is a certain sentiment in the country. And to address that, I think the government has taken this step about the Chinese apps. Does it constitute a response in the trade domain? The answer is yes. But I just want to remind you that if you look at what has happened between United States and China over the last few years, ever since President Trump has come to the White House, there has been a similar attempt at trying to use trade as a means of leverage.
Mr. Bhaskar, if I could, since you use this logic, so is New Delhi trying to imitate the United States in your approach to the other countries, including to China? Is that what you're trying to suggest? New Delhi is learning from Washington today, learning from the Trump administration. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, madam, I'm not. I'm saying
then what
that
does that
every
mean?
country arrives at its own responses. And if you look at how countries have related to each other, trade, I am saying, has been used. For instance, you can look at China, Japan. You have
What
had
about
a
China
similar
and India?
experience, if you remember.
What about China and India, sir? Since we're talking about China and India, and the border issue is totally a bilateral issue, as you know very well. What about this directly to our relationship, I mean, to China and India, rather we drag the other parties into this overall discussion? But maybe that's a question for you to ponder about. Mr. Hu, just to give everybody a equal share of time, Mr. Hu, your arguments here and also your opinions about what needs to be done to resolve the real issues, not rambling around about issues that are not directly related, and what is the end of the so-called reactions and chain reactions, and will China go down that road too, to revenge against India if the India side try to punish the Chinese apps? If the Chinese really did that, what does that mean for both countries, and will that come to a stop at any point?
No, act or react, they will enter into endless vicious circle. I don't recommend that.
Okay.
I think that what China can do is still to using all the channels to calming down the situation and explain to the Indian side that how we take a big picture into consideration, because this kind of revenge and revenge will finally hurt the both peoples. I know that now the two peoples are under the plague of the COVID-19 virus. It is a kind of crisis. It requires the two countries to cooperate, to fight against the COVID-19. But because of the accidental disputes, now we are totally evolved into this kind of bilateral quarrels or bilateral, revenge. It is really, it's not so helpful to both countries being responsible powers, especially as for the responsible governments. We would better to take more consideration about ordinary people's or armed armies' daily lives, which are facing the difficulties under the COVID-19. So this issue, the both governments should consider about it. We know that the border issues cannot be solved in the near future. Shall we live like this? Whenever there is a border standoff or conflicts, then there will be this kind of revenge chain after chain reactions. Then the bilateral relations were totally destroyed.
Okay.
While we're living in such a globalized society, we should have more open mind, approaches toward this kind of issues. We should treat it in a parallel way, in a separate way.
For now, Hu Shisheng and Chipachru Uday Bhaskar, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us and helping us to understand stands from both sides. Really appreciate it. From China and India. And that's all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, you can certainly search our program, World Insight, or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching.